everybody. As a matter of fact, welcome back to another live stream of mine. So, in today's live stream, I wanted to talk about how slavery never really ended to start with. Because, okay, think about if you put things into perspective, folks, especially a lot of my fellow black folks, when you think of slavery, what's the first thing that comes to mind? First and foremost, having to work in a cotton field or on a plantation. Not only that, but having to contribute so many days, months, weeks, hours, seconds, minutes of your time, of your life to working for an overseer slash slave master, excuse me. And if you may not feel like abiding by the slave master's rules, things may, get out of hand, and you may give the slave master or may have given the slave master a piece of your mind. Chances are the slave master would have brutally beat you, whether you may have been either a man or a woman, especially on behalf of us black men, or in some cases had you murdered, especially if you may have gotten out of hand multiple times on behalf of talking back to the slave master, because the slave master may have considered you being insubordinate. Now, compare that to when you work at a workplace, folks, and I'm just not referring to specifically my fellow black folks, but I'm referring to no matter what race you are. How we go out of our ways in most cases to be at our workplaces at an appointed time just to prevent from being late. How we will go out of our ways to wash, first and foremost, prepare ourselves, wash up, take us either shower, bath, put on a fresh pair of clothes, including a fresh pair of underwear, and how we would rush, especially if we may consider ourselves running late. For instance, if you may have to be at that workplace at 7 o'clock in the morning, you may not leave the house. Instead of leaving the house at around 6 o'clock, 6:15. Hey, Miko, thanks for joining. How are you? Okay, instead of leaving the house, especially you may stay like a good 20 minutes away, for instance, from that workplace, you'll have to deal with most likely, hi, Candy, thanks for joining live. You'll have to deal with being in lots of traffic because that's around the main time of the morning when traffic is the most hectic, especially during school season, which will be back before we know it. Anyways, if you may not end up leaving home to around 6:45 that morning, chances are you will go out of your way to most likely run through some traffic lights. For some of you who may like to do reckless driving, only to get to a workplace that we barely like going to, only to sacrifice keeping our jobs in most cases and not being penalized. Because you know how some workplaces, some bosses at some workplaces are more lenient and strict on attendance. Schoolwork has been really hard on me. Do you have any tips? Mikio, okay, on behalf of your schoolwork, why don't you try using Chat GPT? I would say Chat GPT would be quite a bit of help, along with Google. I mean, when Google, YouTube, even TikTok. What school are you attending? What grade level are you at? If you don't mind me asking. But back to the conversation. So many of us will go out of our ways to sacrifice keeping our jobs, even if it may take driving through traffic and speeding through traffic to prevent from being late, to avoid from getting fired from our workplaces. I'm in 11th grade. Yeah, Mikio, um, if you wanted to email me, I'll be free to give you my email right after this Or better yet, let's see. Let's see how I could do this. Um, well, I was trying to see how to type it in, but Mikio, here's my email address. I just said during the live stream, since I don't see how I could possibly type it, T Derrick M 63 at gmail.com, and that's TDERRICK M 63 at gmail.com. But back to the conversation. Okay, there are several of us that will go to a workplace and go out of our ways to keep our jobs at these workplaces. And in most cases, at most workplaces, we hate going to due to how we may have either a difficult coworker or if not that a difficult boss. However, we would go out of our ways to prevent from being late going in and work at these workplaces only to be miserable. How is that not a form of slavery that still existed? And let me also talk about how so many of us, as I speak, a whole lot of us are going in and workplaces, and if we didn't have to rely on a paycheck, the majority of us not only would be homeless, but we will also not work at these workplaces, would prefer to not work a job at all. We go to these workplaces, and am I right or wrong, contribute so many minutes, hours, seconds, just to be able to earn a paycheck the next week. For some of you who may get paid weekly, and lucky you for the ones who get paid weekly, because I get paid on a bi-weekly basis every 2 weeks, if not weekly every 2 weeks, or in some cases by salary at the end of the month. Yep, they sure do, Candy. Anyways, we go to these workplaces, sacrifice all our time, in some cases to our families, our very own wives, husbands, kids, just to go to these workplaces that we barely like going to, and to be able to earn a paycheck that will be spent within a manner and the matter of a few days, in some cases the very same day, after paying all the things we'll have to pay, paying all the debts and bills we'll have to pay. Well, not that, paying for groceries, because you have to eat. For some of you who believe in grocery shopping instead of eating out, or you'll have to get gas and you will have an automobile. If not that, if not having to pay for gas for your automobile, otherwise, you wouldn't be able to drive it as often, either to or from work. You have to pay for insurance for your automobile. You also have to be responsible for vehicle repairs. The workplace in itself is dealing the joy of living, the joy of making a living. Well, I guess you could say to a certain extent, Candy. And thanks for your feedback. Anyways, we do all these things just to be able to go to a workplace, and just to be able to earn a paycheck for the most part while going to these workplaces that the majority of us would rather not go to. If we had a choice and if we could afford to quit going to these workplaces and working these jobs, we would do it as we speak. But due to how hard times are, how the cost of living is going up and up day by day, week after week, month after month, so many of us, and then due to our parents' decisions, in most cases as well, because the majority of us don't come from rich or wealthy families. Instead, the majority of us came from households, grew up in households where both of our parents, for some of you who were lucky enough to be blessed to have both parents in the household, only for them to have to repeat the same cycle, only for them to have to go into a workplace and contribute, dedicate so many hours, minutes, seconds to work in these jobs at these workplaces for so many years, only to be able to get a paycheck and be able to take care of all the responsibilities with that paycheck, and then watch that paycheck get eaten up after using all our expenses and having to repeat the same cycle, pay period after pay period, until most of us may end up getting old enough to retire from working. And to be honest, there are people that are retirement age that are 65 plus who still have to work jobs, still have to go to workplaces that if they were financially stable enough to go to, had the choice not to go to, they would prefer not to. How is this not the sincerest form of new age slavery? On top of that, if most of us may get out of line on the job and may just put our bosses, our main bosses that may give us a hard time in their places, give them a peace of mind, may, for instance, cuss that one boss that gets on our nerves. If we may say any slight thing to tick them off, chances are we will usually may face a high risk of being terminated from working these jobs. First, in some cases, at some workplaces, let me rephrase that, you may get first and foremost a verbal warning, number two, a written warning, number three, a final warning. And once you were to reach that final warning, that's when your job will be in jeopardy. And eventually you will end up losing that job due to you being, as the supervisor would say, insubordinate, I'm trying to say. Yes, Candy, excuse me for mispronouncing your name. Yes, a lot of us are still driving for generational wealth. It's a hard thing to reach in this economy. Exactly, due to inflation. And then how the president, our current president, wants to have all these tariffs imposed, that's, if they do finally go into effect, that'll make times even more harder. And this is one reason why, Candy, that there are more and more people judging from other YouTube videos I came across who are so down on their luck to the point where they are living in storage sheds. Look it up, Candy, when you get a chance. I am not BSing. People are so down on their luck, so facing such hard times to the point where there are other content creators that are talking about how people have resorted now to living in storage units. I mean, how crazy have times gotten? And then so crazy to the point, I know this is a whole other topic for a whole other video, but how about there are other content creators who have been making videos about how $20 an hour is the new poor. Am I right or wrong, Candy? And if you have a job making $20 an hour, Miss Candy, you will see exactly where I'm coming from and other content creators are coming from. Anytime, back to the topic though, another form of slavery, how slavery has not ended. How many of the majority of us in the U.S. alone are driving automobiles that require monthly payments? Payments that we won't be able to finish paying on or paying off until the whole term, whichever term, whether you may have either a 7-year term on your vehicle or longer, because there are some people who may have as long as 10 years to pay off their automobiles. You have to, for most people who aren't fortunate to be able to afford to pay cash for an automobile, you have to go first to the dealership, where now, to be honest, when what's that called? Carvana, you don't even have to do that nowadays. And Vroom, if Vroom is still around. Anyways, for most of us, anytime we may see an automobile that we may like, we have to first and foremost go to the dealership, look around the car lot, to sum it all up and cut to the chase. When we finally do see that automobile that we may like, and that we may be so obsessed when we have to go through so much paperwork nowadays, we have to consult with a salesperson. On top of that, we have to have our credit ran through, whichever bank will be willing to approve us for the automobile, especially you may have challenging credit. And then you have to be stuck. You'll eventually have to be stuck with a car loan for, in some cases, a maximum of around 7 years. In some cases, 10 years. How is that not another form of slavery? And then, if and to prove my point even more, if you may miss even one payment on that automobile, you face a high risk of that automobile being repossessed. Once again, the sincerest form of slavery at its finest. Am I right or wrong? And when no matter what race you are, I don't care whether you may be white, Hispanic, Asian, Middle Eastern, we are all slaves to a certain degree. We are all going through the same exact struggle. Yes, Candice, yes, $20 used to go a long way, and you were making a decent living back in the day when $20 an hour. Exactly. Even and do you not know, Candy? Thanks for responding back. There are people, other content creators, who have been making videos on how $30 an hour is also the new poor. Not just $20 an hour, not just $25 an hour, but $30 an hour is also the new poor. Now, another form of how we're still under slavery. How many of us have kids, right? And kids who are old enough, whether they may be either 6 years old, between 6 years old or 18 years old, kids who may not feel like going to school, may have skipped school quite a bit of days. I call it debt. It never gets paid off, and then it goes onto the next person even after you die. Exactly. I agree. Thanks for that viewpoint. Anyways, how many of us may have kids, and this is another example of how we're still slavery, how slavery never really ended, how it's just been reconstructed, re-engineered, and your kid may have missed a few days from school, only to be notified by the local authorities or being faced with the threat of having to first go to court and eventually be put in jail for your very own kid, on behalf of your very own kid not wanting to go to school. How is that not another form of slavery as well? I'm telling you, people, no matter, once again, if you are black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Middle Eastern, we are all slaves to a certain degree in some shape or form. Think about it. For some of you who feel like you had a freedom, true enough, you had a freedom to go wherever you want to go to any restaurant, any grocery store, gas station, um, wherever. Have the freedom to get in your car, drive your car. But in most cases, most of us are stuck working 9 to 5s in order to be able to afford what we have. And most of us have to contribute to some form of slavery in order to gain the things we have gotten, whether it may be our very own automobiles, our very own homes, that furniture you may be financing or maybe renting, even some furniture you may have paid off. I could go on and on. All of the things we possess, or at least we think we possess, when all the things we think we possess, we had to contribute so many months, so many years, weeks, days, minutes, seconds, hours of slavery, of working for somebody else, so who will never get to meet in most cases, of going to work on another plantation, a corporate plantation at that. Because slavery, true enough, old age slavery was pertaining to working on an actual plantation, slave plantation. Once again, contributing so many hours, minutes, seconds, days, weeks, months of working in all kinds of elements over where for an overseer, a white overseer in most cases, picking cotton, doing all kinds of physically intensive work. Whereas now, most of us are stuck working 9 to 5s until we'll get old enough to retire. And in some cases, even we may get old enough to get retirement age, since the age of retirement in order to be able to draw your pension is going more and more from at one while it was 62 years old, now I believe it's 70 or 70 plus. Not only that, but another form of slavery. Speaking of jobs, how many of us have to always seek permission from a boss anytime we may want to take a lunch break? Even to take a 15-minute break, we have to seek permission from a boss, whether it may be either a team leader, supervisor, or manager. And in some cases, for some of these workplaces, if you go even 1 minute over your either lunch break or your 15-minute break, you will face consequences and repercussions. You will face a high risk of being punished by being written up, not being well, first being written up, and then if you keep on making a habit out of doing it, eventually losing your job. That's another form of slavery. How you always have to seek permission every time. Most of us may want to take either lunch break or a 15-minute break. We have to seek permission from a higher up, well, not higher up, so it's more so, but more so of an overseer, whether it may be either a team lead, manager, or supervisor. Not only that, anytime we may want to take some personal time off, a vacation, either a vacation or use some time off for sick time, whether it may be on behalf of either ourselves being sick for an extended period of time or a relative or close one being sick. What do we have to do? We have to seek permission from a boss just to be able to request some time off, some personal time off, or sick time off on most of these jobs that we work. That's another form of slavery. Once again, folks, and think about it. After I'm done recording this live, think deeply how slavery has not ended completely. It never ended to start with. It's just excuse me, because I do stumble across my words from time to time. It's just been re-engineered. Anyways, make sure to like, share, comment, last but not least, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I'm out, folks.